So it looks like we have, yes, I see Rep. Tami Gouveia is here, has joined us. So further ado, I'm just gonna spotlight you. And welcome, Rep. We are excited to have you here. Yeah, I'm gonna just open the floor to you, let you take it away, just so everybody remembers when we get into the question answer section. So we have our policy of, I'll call on you to answer a question, to ask a question. Our guest will answer, and then you can have one follow-up, and then we'll move on to the next person. So without further ado, take it away.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Chris. Thank you to all of you for being here this evening and for being Democrats. I'm State Representative Tami Gouveia. I'm running for Lieutenant Governor because I believe that we deserve leaders who put the health, the well-being, and the dignity of every single resident in our state at the center of the ways that we are making decisions. And I believe that in a state that is as rich in resources and history and culture and connectedness, that there's no reason why any region or anybody should be left behind. I grew up in the city of Lowell. My grandfather was in the Carpenters Union, which allowed my family to have a middle-class life and solid economic footing. It allowed my parents to buy a two-family home. They rented out the upstairs apartment, and that really helped them stretch their wages. There were certainly times that we struggled financially if the economy wasn't doing so well, but that definitely wasn't the case for so many of my neighbors and my friends and my classmates, and even some of my extended family. I had friends in elementary school whose parents struggled with substance use disorder and domestic violence. I had friends in high school who didn't have heat or hot water in the wintertime, whose mom, who's a Black woman, suffered from medical racism, suffered years, that went undiagnosed with diabetes. I'm 47 years old. I share that with you so that you understand that I was coming of age when Lowell became a resettlement location for families fleeing the genocide and the Khmer Rouge. And, here they are trying to adapt to a completely different culture and weather, educational system, healthcare system, and then just getting slapped in the face with xenophobia and racism on top of it. So while these experiences weren't my own, as a young person, they really impacted me because they were happening to people I really cared about. And it instilled in me a sense of empathy and a desire to want to be the kind of leader who would try to solve problems and prevent human suffering. So I knew I wanted to go into public service from a very young age. I don't come from a family that's politically connected or wealthy or influential. And so I became a public health social worker. And that's what I've been doing for the last 25 years. In 2007, I noticed that all of the surrounding suburbs had a substance abuse prevention coalition, but Lowell did not have one. And this was so early in the opioid crisis. And so I approached the city manager and the superintendent of police, and we formed the Lowell Roundtable on substance abuse prevention, bringing together the heads of the hospitals, the nonprofits, parents, and young people. And within a year of forming that coalition, we secured $1 million in state and federal money that we put to good use to support our young people passing policies, implementing programs to prevent youth substance use, and then also to support treatment for people who are already in the throes of substance use. It wasn't long after forming this coalition, which I went on to chair for 5 years, that I became a single parent to my kids who were 6 and 3 years old at the time. They are 20 and 17 now. They are doing as well as most kids their age, given the climate crisis, the disruption to all of our lives around COVID, the rising cost of goods and housing and education, and of course, racial injustice. Our kids are seeing all of this. So back when I became a single parent, though, I started to have the financial struggles that I saw in families that I really cared about. $60 in my grocery bill to feed myself and my 2 kids. I was underinsured, so I carried medical debt for a year. And there were so many nights that I went to bed really worried about what the next day would bring, feeling ashamed, feeling like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get ahead? What am I doing wrong? And so these are the stressors that I carried with me for years. But I knew that eventually I would land on my feet and that I would be okay, even though I became unemployed during or soon after the 2008 recession. And I knew I'd be okay because I speak the language, I have networks here, I'm educated, and I'm white. And we know that that's not the case for far too many of our families, whether we're talking about in the midst of COVID right now, or even for the last several decades, the economic inequality that our Black, Brown, and immigrant families face every single day and have been facing for a very long time. And so I carry these with me. I moved to Acton 13 years ago, and I became the state representative for the 14th Middlesex District. And it's truly been an honor and a privilege to serve this district. I've been proud of some of the work that we've done. I was able to get my net zero stretch energy code, which addresses buildings as a source of greenhouse gas emissions, into the next gen climate bill that was signed into law in January of last year. Passed fentanyl test strips, which is a harm reduction strategy that is being administered through 30 police departments, passing out fentanyl test strips to people who use substances, and not only opioids, but all substances, because we know that fentanyl is pretty much in all street drugs right now. I was proud to stand with my colleagues in passing police reform, banning conversion therapy, and supporting the mental health of our students, and then also passing the Student Opportunity Act, which we still need to really accelerate in making sure that we are fully funding and equitably funding all of our schools. But here I am, 13 years after, losing my job because of the recession, a single parent. I earned my doctorate in public health in late 2021, and now I'm running for lieutenant governor. And I declared first back in June because I really wanted to get out across the state, crisscross the state, to talk to people about what are the pain points, what are the things that keep you up at night, what inspires you, what gives you. And my goal as the next lieutenant governor for the state is to build bridges between the corner office and every single corner in our state. We hope that you'll join our campaign. We invite you to join something truly historic that is about to happen here. Never have we had anybody quite like me in the corner office, a single parent, a social worker, and a doctor of public health, and someone who's just really been rolling up my sleeves for the last 25 years working on behalf of working families. So we'll put information in the chat. I think my campaign manager, Kristen Ellico, who's here with us, already done that. We invite you to reach out to us and to check out my website, tamigouveia.com, to learn more. But for now, I was at the picnic in the summer, and I look forward to answering questions here, because I don't think we really had a Q&A then, but I look forward to answering questions and having a conversation here with all of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us and for coming to speak to us. We really appreciate
Of course.
it at the picnic, definitely. So I'm glad we have this opportunity for people to get to know you a little bit better. Rod, question.
Pardon me for asking this question. There is a bust in the background of your room, and I can't see who that is, but I wonder if you could tell us who that person is and why he's important to you.
Absolutely. So it's Abraham Lincoln. It is my fiance's grandfather's bust that we, it's not anything really of high quality or fancy, but it's just something that is a little bit of an interesting thing in our family. And, I do hold Lincoln in high regard. I know that he had some problems inherent to the role that he played in our history, but also there's some really great things about Lincoln. So that's who that is. Thanks for asking.
Victoria.
Hi, can you explain to me, well, first of all, thank you for joining the Salem Democrats tonight, and for bringing your team with you, including Kimberly, who I've known for many years and love to death, and I'm so excited to see your sweet face. Sorry, mine's not on. I was just making dinner and I just worked out right beforehand and have not showered.
Totally understand.
So I would like to know why everyone wants to be lieutenant governor in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, because I genuinely don't understand. And I think you're all, I have to say, I think, the candidates that I've seen are all fabulous, wonderful people. So I'm counting you in that. I just don't understand the draw.
Well, I can't answer for other people, but what I can tell you for me, I really spent a lot of time thinking about this position. I did admittedly look also at governor. And what it came down to for me is I truly enjoy leading from behind. I don't believe that leaders always need to be the person at the top of the ticket or in the front of the room or the one who's getting all the accolades. It's something that I've done throughout my career is work behind the scenes. So I'll give you an example. In the legislature just before COVID hit, on the House side, we passed both a transportation bond bill and a transportation revenue package. And related to that, I led 2 separate working groups, really to focus on greening our fleets and our transportation system and making it more affordable and easier for people to get on and off the trains. And then the other piece in my area here along the Route 2 corridor, it's one of the Concord Rotary is one of the most dangerous rotaries in the state, and really trying to identify ways to get people out of their cars and onto public transportation so that we can reduce traffic accidents, but also help us achieve our state's climate goals and reduce congestion, because we know we have one of the worst congestion. We have one of the worst congestion in the whole country. So those are examples of things that I've done and would love to continue doing as Lieutenant Governor, really leading task forces, bring people together to roll up our sleeves, work collaboratively to address issues such as housing, mental health, and really getting us through COVID. Those are the 3 main areas that I have been hearing about all across the state. You know, for a little while, I think we were optimistic about where we were with vaccines, and we hadn't quite gotten into the fall and winter months. But I think, you know, someone with my background as a doctor of public health, it's a really good place for me to be, to advise and be a partner to the governor, leaning into my expertise as a public social worker. So I hope that helps. There's one other area, of course, is the Governor's Council, and that body. You know, the Lieutenant Governor is ex officio member of the Governor's Council, which appoints judges to the bench and parole board members. And I think it's important that we start to have conversations about, well, what are the criteria that we want for our judges and our parole board members? If we're truly serious in our state about addressing racial injustice, then we need to have a serious conversation about the over-incarceration of Black, Brown, and immigrant men in our state. And that includes, you know, the fact that judges have discretion. And I think it's important that they have a better understanding of the role that trauma and racism and implicit biases play in some of the adjudication of cases. So that's something that I would also like to bring as the next Lieutenant Governor. But I appreciate the question, Victoria.
I get one follow-up. So my follow-up is, what happens if like Marty Walsh jumps in and wins? Do you still want to be Lieutenant Governor?
Absolutely. I want to be lieutenant. I want to be the best Lieutenant Governor we have ever seen to whoever the next Democratic governor is. So 100%. If Marty Walsh gets in, I will work with him. I can work with anybody. Thank you, Victoria.
Thanks, Tami.
Bless you, Chris.
Sorry, I needed to compose myself. Shay.
Oh, I thought you were sneezing.
No. Shay.
Sorry, my microphone wouldn't come. I apologize for
Hi,
my camera that is off. Would you, Madam, restate for me your last name?
Yes, Gouveia.
Yes, Gouveia.
Portuguese. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And I was listening to you, and I hear you mentioning about a doctorate, but I didn't hear in what, but you just mentioned it. And I serve a population that developmentally and intellectually that need extra supports, especially at the school level, those parents.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned about the Student Opportunity Act that you had passed. In light of, I mean, this is Dr. King's birthday, and we're still fighting for the same thing. Yes, last night I was on a call, and I'm telling people that, and I was thinking about Rep. I forgot him. He's African American, and whenever somebody brings something regarding race, he always came and he was criticizing President Biden, basically. And sometimes I feel like he's from another planet for some reason. But this is Dr. King's, birthday, and we're talking about race relation in this country. And I'm a Black woman, a minority, and with a child with special needs. So it has been a long ride advocating for her and supporting other families in my position. And what any plan, since you mentioned about schools, that you would do? Because last night, what I said on my call, we need to not to be intimidated and finding ways to educate our children in terms of race and race relation. I believe truly in my heart, that's the only way we're going to change the issues. Because, we have a system that has been there for how many years? It's still going on. Black has less voice and we're being still trumped on. It's ongoing no matter what. So our hope is our future, our children. And we see people out there saying that, oh, no. We're going to scare the kids. We're going to make them feel bad. They are our hope and our future. And they are the one really that could take it over and change it. So anything you could say in that regard?
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely. Yeah, no, and I really appreciate your comments and the experiences that you're sharing from multiple intersectional perspectives as a woman of color and as a mom of a child with special needs. I just really appreciate you sharing it. So first and foremost, kind of related to that, what I see far too often in government is that when we have advisory boards or task forces, that we are only including the same people who think the same way and who think they have all the answers to the problems that we're facing. What we really need to do is have people with different perspectives coming in and really sharing why mass vaccination sites was not the way to go and how troublesome and how difficult it was for people to access vaccines from a multitude of areas. Why and how our transportation system is really just a bunch of little mini transportation systems. It's not really one big system because of the ways that the funding streams happen. And what does that mean for people who rely on public transportation to get from point A to point B? How hard we make it by creating and investing only in larger institutions that provide social services rather than smaller nonprofits, and giving them and small businesses truly support that they need to be able to serve the business and service needs of our families locally. So as Lieutenant Governor, I want to bring in people who have the lived experience, kind of similar to what I had as a single parent, of just how hard it can be sometimes to get through the day because you have all these other stressors that you're carrying with you. And then, oh, by the way, we're in the middle of a pandemic and you find out that, you've been unemployed and the state might have given you too much in your unemployment check and now you have to pay it back, but you've already spent that because you wanted to move to a better apartment or you to replace your car. So there's so many ways that as a government body that we put up barriers and make it harder for people. And it's even harder when it comes to issues around race and gender and ability, because those are far too often folks who get left out of the conversation. And I'm here to say that I'm committed to bringing people into the conversation in meaningful ways. As it relates to, some of the status quo, we have taken far too long to address systemic racism in our state. I'm really grateful for the first start with police reform. That's not as far enough. There is so much more work for us to do as a state, including passing various pieces of legislation that will teach our young people, our students, about the role that racist policies have played in housing, educational opportunities, access to jobs, and opportunities for lifelong learning and thriving. There's the CARE Act, which is also focused on teaching our young people. There's a side bill that we passed that was really, again, a really great start to the kinds of conversations that we really want our young people to be having. Because what I see, and as I said in my introduction, I have a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old, and I think there's so much more we can be doing to teaching empathy and understanding and problem solve from a place of compassion than from a place of competition. And I think far too often we're setting our students up to compete for smaller and smaller pieces of the pie. And what we ought to be doing is expanding the pie. We know we have extreme income inequality in our state, where Black residents only have $8 and white residents have over $100,000 in wealth. That needs to be changed. We don't have social mobility in the state of Massachusetts, and it's because of our corporate tax structure, also our other tax structures like the estate tax and also the income tax. It's why I support the Fair Share Amendment, is making sure that wealthy families are really paying their fair share into supporting transportation, education, and so many of the other social services. But I'd love to, continue the dialogue with you, Shay, and other folks, because I think there's just so much more that we can be doing to address the wrongs of the past. It's why I talk about the role of the Governor's Council and the role of judges, because I think there's an opportunity to address, again, the over-incarceration of Black and brown men in our state. And I'll just say one other thing. So when I did my doctorate in public health, I did it on non-arrest policies for opioid use and addiction. And I chose that topic because what I'd really love to see is that we move away from incarceration for substance use disorder, which so often ties in with drug dealing as well, because we know sometimes people are dealing drugs to support their own addiction, or even because there just are not the economic opportunities that our families deserve. So we need those investments. And that's another reason why I support the Fair Share Amendment. So I thank you for the question, Shay, and I look forward to connecting with you again in the future if you'd be open to it.
Thank you so much. I look forward to that also. And Chris, if I get your permission, can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. And Chris was talking earlier, Madam. He was talking earlier about not able to, I hope it's okay to mention that, Chris, that he needed meds, he couldn't get it, and with something he was suffering with and all of that. And, I hear older people, I have even done that myself, where you get half of a tab instead of the full dose because you want to ration, and especially for senior citizens, we hear that. And we're talking about disparities here. And I read that a little bit earlier to Chris, but it wasn't clear. Some group of disability advocate has a call today with the CDC, and this is regarding several disability group. And this is regarding the new kits now that are on the market to test for COVID, the home kits. So I know Jay also, I apologize, just mentioned about how to get them. And that was a question that was raised, asking CDC members today that that these free kits include, if they include instruction in easily accessible language and how to interpret the results. And sadly, the answer was no. So we, disability advocates are really questioning that before we go serving those families, that to really, and self-advocate, to really pause on it until, we are able to get more information about it, because the accessibility. So this is the thing. I know it's a hard time now. We're trying to serve the population. Yes.
I'm just gonna, so I found, I'm sorry to interrupt you. So someone shared with me recently, I think the Mass website I just have here now. So I don't know if it's a federal, I don't know if the deficiency is federal level, but it looks like at least at the state level, we do have infographic for COVID self-tests at home in multiple languages. So I'm looking at the website right now, and it looks like we have it, everything from Albanian to Vietnamese, in terms of different languages translated. So that's at least, I don't know federally how they're doing, but at least here at the state level, it looks like we do have a little bit better accessibility for other languages.
Wonderful, thank you. Anyway, that's a thing to keep in mind, how the policies are done.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you so much.
No, thank you. So as it relates to this issue, in 2020, I started talking to infectious disease experts and testing experts, and put together legislation after working with social service these agencies that service our elder population, with the Teachers Association, with business groups, with Black business groups, to put together legislation that I filed in May around free rapid antigen tests to go out to every single person in our Commonwealth. And it also included a section on language justice, and also a section on making sure that we were doing like demonstrations of how to take the tests and how to interpret them at community fairs and outdoor gatherings. So that's why I filed the legislation, you know, as quickly as I could last year. And it wasn't taken up. And then when the ARPA bill came, I filed an amendment to create rapid testing through taking some of the ARPA dollars. I'm glad we're finally here having a much more serious conversation. But I'll tell you folks, it didn't have to be this way. We didn't have to scramble and suffer with a privatized response of going to CVS or Walgreens, getting there and finding out that the kits are all sold out. Other countries, what they've done is they've been mailing rapid tests home for over a year, and they've done that so that they can keep their people safe while going about doing regular business, getting back to school, keeping businesses open, et cetera, et cetera. So it's great to see that those materials are translated, but I don't know how our immigrant folks are finding out about the mass.gov website to even access those materials. They're not coming in the mail with the test kits because we're not mailing those test kits home, right? So I think there's just a lot of gaps, and it didn't have to be this way. It's one of the things that I was really trying to resolve. We are taking up a bill tomorrow in the House, a supplemental bill on testing. I filed 6 amendments, and I filed another amendment around language justice again, because we need to put things on the radio. We need to do digital advertising. We need to put notices on buses and other public transportation so that it's much more accessible than just relying on what's happening on the mass.gov website, which I personally find very frustrating to navigate. So that's just how I think about that issue, Shay. And I'm glad you brought up the testing issue. It's something that I've really been beating the drum on for a long time.
And I know DPH, I will add only that, will send certain language to us, because we have an outreach group, one Portuguese and Spanish and Haitians and Asian, Chinese and Vietnamese. So they will send those diverse language to us. And
That's
then
great.
we share them with other with parents and other groups. So that's a good thing. And DPH.
I'm glad for that. Yeah, that's
Thanks.
That's
Shay, for the
great.
question. Thank you.
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you so much. Let's see. Last question, it looks like, and that's perfect timing wise, is Chris. I'm gonna let you take it away, and that'll be the end of the question segment.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Thank you so much for attending our picnic over the summer, and thank you for showing up today and speaking to us. It was highly informative. I just have a quick question. I was reading this morning's Politico's playbook email, and you mentioned a couple times the Governor's Council, and really the only 2 jobs that the Lieutenant Governor has is to stand in for the governor if anything ever happens. Hopefully it's something good, like they get promoted to Washington, and to chair the Governor's Council. Now, according to Politico's email this morning, you've never attended the Governor's Council.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Correct.
And,
it's not correct anymore.
okay.
No.
Has someone, seeing that you're running for Lieutenant Governor, should you have checked it out a couple times, maybe before running, just to see if it's something that you'd be interested in doing?
Yeah, well, so what I did, my approach to finding out about the Governor's Council was to talk directly to 4 or 5. I reached out to all of them. I only connected with 4 or 5 of the Governor's Council members and had very direct conversations about what does the job entail? How do you approach the job? What is your process for making decisions about nominations? What are the opportunities to address racial injustice? What is the role that the lieutenant governor has played from your perspective? What do you want the lieutenant governor to play? Like, what role do you want them to play? So that's how I approach that issue. I have watched a number of governor's council meetings. I am not going into the State House because they really don't want us in the State House. So going in person is not something that's possible, but I have watched a number of the governor's council meetings, and there's a number of sort of perfunctory things that come up in terms of the nomination, and then making decisions about the various nominees. So I hope that answers your question, but
Yes.
I have watched the governor's council meetings. I just haven't attended in person.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. It's an important question, and it's a fair question. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Gouveia. We really appreciate having you.
Please call me Tami.
Okay, Tami.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just call me
If
Tami,
you
everybody.
insist.
But it's great seeing you all. It's great to see Marcia and Julie from the state committee and Senator Lovely. So great to be with all of you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.